You like creating cards? We like creating cards? Here we go! Our first card was sent in by Lewis, who created Titan of Life Cycle. It's an 8 mana artifact creature in green that is a 7/10 with trample. When Titan of Life Cycle enters or leaves the battlefield or your graveyard from anywhere, reveal the top 4 cards of your library, put a permanent card from among them in your hand and the rest in your graveyard. You gain green mana for each land revealed this way. You gain life equal to the greatest toughness among creatures revealed this way. Lewis also let us know that he tried to create something that synergized with decks trying to cheat creatures into play that was kind of a callback to Sundering Titan, which, you know, used to be a main reanimation target. So Thoralf, what do you think?
So I'm gonna give it a 4.
I landed on 3.
3, okay. My reasoning is, it kind of reminds me of a lot of Atraxa, I have to say, because that's a very recent reanimation / putting into play target for the low-cost mana, so it kind of refuels your hand in order to be protected by all the removal stuff. I find the text a little bit hard to pass, especially the one question I had, enters or leaves the battlefield, or your graveyard from any way, I assume means enters or leaves.
Yeah, I think so too, and that's also the thing I find the most bad, like the worst offender on the card, because this effect, triggering when it's put into the graveyard, is no fun. This is not going to play out well if you mill this with Dredge, if you mill this in any way possible, and then you play Noxious Revival on it, it triggers again, it mills itself. If you reveal another card, if you reveal itself, it also triggers again. You gain life, you gain mana. This is way too broken. Like, this is just absurd.
Yeah, probably the most stable appearance of this card would be just in not a green deck, but in any deck that somehow makes a free discard, right? Let's say you have a loot effect, right? You basically don't loot, you draw a card because you just discard the Titan and get something else. Also, I have a question. When it is in the battlefield and dies, do you do that once or twice?
Because it leaves the battlefield and it enters the graveyard.
I assume twice.
But either way, I feel like this is way too broken, because also if you reanimate it, oh well, it just left the graveyard and it's entering the battlefield.
Yeah.
Holy moly.
So my fix would be just remove all the graveyard stuff. Like, enters or leaves the battlefield, do this, right?
Yeah, I think so too.
And I think that's not good enough to be compatible with Atraxa nowadays, because Atraxa draws like 5 cards.
Yeah, also Atraxa has better stats.
Has lifelink, but it is an artifact, so you can.
And it has so many more synergies, right? It's in green, which is way better at ramping. It's mono green. It's good. It's an artifact, so you can reanimate it with Trash for Treasure or something. So I feel like there is something to be done there. Also, adding mana immediately is kind of a neat impact on the game.
Sure.
So I think there is an angle there. That's hence why I think both of us didn't give it a 1 or 2 or anything. So yeah, there is an angle, just not this. Currently, it's broken.
I wonder what you use the mana for. It's like you just paid 8 mana if you hardcast and you get like
you play another Lanoa.
2 mana back. Yeah.
So while we're on the topic of broken cards, please be advised that rating cards, sitting here talking about the broken aspects of cards, is very easy, whereas designing well-balanced, fun, powerful cards is extremely hard. Wizards has an entire team to do it. So if we're criticizing your card, or any card for that matter, please don't take that personally. You're not supposed to be a professional card designer. If you were, you should be getting paid for it. So yeah. Let's move on to the next card.
All right, Julian sends in card number 2. It's called Izzet Spell Chronicler. It costs 2 Izzet mana, so blue, blue, red, red, or blue, red, basically. It's a 2/1 human wizard, and it says whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you exile the top card of your library. And whenever Izzet Chronicler deals damage to an opponent or dies, you may put an exile card into your hand.
For me, this is an 8 or a 9. I'll go with 9.
Love it. I had an 8, yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a well-balanced payoff these days. I think in the earlier days of Magic, this might have been on the more powerful side of things, where it might have even been too powerful. But these days, we have Dragon's Rage Channeler, we have Ragavan, we have cards like that. This actually seems cool. Like, you can kind of build around it in limited. The only thing I would maybe look into further would be the fact that you exile a lot of your own cards. Maybe this should be a May ability. Maybe like there's some feel bads when you exile multiple good cards you need. I don't know how it plays there. I think maybe it would be a May ability on modern cards, but apart from that, this feels cool. This feels it, and this feels powerful.
It pairs really well with some of the free counter spells, like if you have Force of Negation, for example, in Modern, or some very cheap interaction spells that can run out of control, which it's nice. Like you have a card that is fairly easy to deal with if you want to. Also, if the removal spell is right away, they don't even get a card of it. You have a fair one-to-one trade.
Cool card. Well done, Julian. Our next card was submitted by Abby, and it's Chosen Who Sees All. It's a 4-mana 2/3 legendary human monk, and it has, if a spell or ability you control would cause you to look at one or more cards from the top of your library, instead look at that many cards +1. And if a spell or ability you control would cause you to look at one or more cards from the top of your library, put one of those cards on the bottom of your library. Now this card might be a good opportunity for us to note that we always interpret cards in the way they were meant to be played. The rule, you're not supposed to be judges knowing all the rules. This card would need a rewording on the second ability most likely, but we'll just act as if it had the perfect rules text, right? We don't care about you knowing the correct wording. With that being said, what's your score on this card, Toffel?
I would give this card a 9.
Yeah, I'm at 7.
And the reason is basically the idea is awesome. Like we had those, when you do X +1 instead for a lot of things, and I think this one is unique. It didn't exist yet. I don't see why the last ability is necessary, to be honest. Like, why do you put a card on the bottom? What is the idea at looking at one more card and putting it on the bottom?
Because like usually you already put them on the bottom.
Yeah.
Right? Like in Impulse or something, you
exactly.
Kind of do that.
And sometimes you put them in the graveyard, so you put one on the bottom and some in your graveyard. And what if with Expressive? Like there are some weird things.
Yeah, I feel like there's some payoff missing for me. Like I'd like something cool that I get to do. Like, yes, looking at an extra card is cool, but I don't know, some little payoff. Usually the new commanders have like, oh, whenever you do the thing you're supposed to do, give me a +1/+1 counter or something like that. Maybe something like that is missing for me, but apart from that, cool commander.
Yep. Seth Olaf Viren wrote, Fajim Kanu, 1 white, 2/2, legendary creature, human wizard. Whenever another creature you control dies, investigate. Whenever you sacrifice a clue, put a +1/+1 counter on every creature you control.
So for me, this is an 8.
Oh, why?
I feel like this is on a power level that is reasonable these days. Yes, it's kind of oppressive against removal-based decks, but at the same time, yeah, we have had these effects in the past. Maybe the first ability should only trigger once every turn. That's something they usually do these days, so you don't like combo off between sacrificing artifacts and sacrificing creatures. And then maybe the second thing should say whenever you investigate, because that's actually the ability of sacrificing a clue to its own ability, if I remember correctly. Because this way you can sacrifice it somehow else and get the benefit, which I'm not sure if is intended. And then the last thing I want to mention is you gotta have some cool flavor to pull this all together. Why are we getting stronger from investigating clues? But all in all, I feel this is a cool card and can lead to some interesting gameplay where you have tough decisions between, do I pay mana to pump my team or do I play a spell?
So what if I tell you, I mean, that person is like an investigator, right? And the creature died, then you find out that it died, right?
Yeah.
Like you get the clue. And then he investigates with his team, and then once you investigate it, you get the result. You're happy, so it makes your team stronger in friendship. Would that be a reasonable backstory?
Yeah, I think so.
I think you're quite right. Like I like the once per turn thing. I didn't think of that before you mentioned it. I thought it's very hard to put it out of control, but it's very common that they put it once. If I remember from the backside from Danik.
Yeah, I feel like you can somehow come up with a combination of cards that says whenever you sacrifice an artifact, create a creature token, and then whenever you sacrifice a creature token, this investigates, and then you have like grinding station or something. Like, I feel like this is just like
grinding station, yeah.
Like sacrificing the clues to grinding station. I don't know, something like that.
All right, something else funny about the card? Would you say?
No, I think that's it.
Very striking name.
Am I missing something?
I don't know. The name seems somewhat weird. Maybe you say it out loud.
I'm afraid of saying something inappropriate now.
You can say it out loud, it's fine.
Fajin Kanu?
I mean, it's a very weird assortment of letters, one would say.
Oh! What? What? That's a joke.
What do you mean it's a joke? That is. I mean, randomly, it's just. I will also say the creator has a very weird name, I have to say.
You're such a... Did you submit this?
Yes, that's mine.
I gave this a 0 out of...
I heard 8. No, but I like your criticism. It's very good, you know?
I was wondering why you wouldn't give it a grade. Like,
It's a 10 for me. Yeah, no, that was
all right, final question. If I could ask the creator anything, I'd ask them, why is this creature a wizard?
To be honest, I didn't make it a wizard. I think Carl made it a wizard in hindsight. For me, it was like a general type of idea. Yeah, so I mean, I can quickly assess how I got there. I felt like white needs some elaborate card draw. I mean, obviously you can't just stick card draw on white, and it's always a commander problem that white doesn't have any reasonable card draw, which they're changing, but it's still a process. And yeah, you get a clue, you use a clue, pay off on a card, kind of modern, lazy design, but elegant. So that was my idea.
That's hilarious.
I was really worried you get the name right away.
No, I didn't get it at all. I only wondered that Seth Olive Viren sounds a lot like Sethran Olive. Which was just a coincidence.
That was also Carl's idea. I didn't know that, but pretty funny. Yes.
Well, I mean, since we only got 1 grade on this card, if you want to give the 2nd grade on this card, then please do so in the comments below. What do you think of this card? Is it broken? Should it have a once per turn clause? Is it fine like this? Let us know.
Yeah.
So Daniel sent in Shambling Giant, which is a 5-mana green-black 5/10 plant giant creature with Armor 1, which says if a source would deal damage to Shambling Giant, it deals that much damage -1 instead. And whenever this creature is dealt damage, put that many -1/-1 counters on this creature instead. And whenever a source would deal damage to you, it deals that much damage to Shambling Giant instead.
I'm kind of torn between 8 and 9. If I have to be honest, I have to probably give it a 6 or 7. So it's like the idea is fascinating. I love the idea, and the execution is kind of. Let's say it's a 7. Let's say it's.
That was my suggestion too. I also give this a 7. So now, what's your thought process behind that rating?
So when you look at a card, you make it like play through your head, right? And
yeah.
First of all, armor, which in the way it's displayed here is a very common way of producing armor as a mechanic, that it prevents 1 damages, is very intuitive and very great. Like, if you ask somebody what does armor 1 do, they would probably say like, oh, it probably prevents the damage, and that's what it does. And it's awesome when mechanics already explain themselves.
I 100% agree with you there. That mechanic feels like an evergreen mechanic, actually, kind of, like on first sight. Probably there's reasons they haven't introduced it, but it just feels very intuitive.
There's actually another card called Palisade Giant, which is a 2/10 and says every damage that is dealt to you is dealt to the giant instead. So that's nothing very new, but combined obviously with the fact that the creature dies in the long run, it's kind of overpriced for my taste.
Yes, I agree. The stats are kind of low on this one for the ability.
So let's say you attack with the 3/3 or you engage with the 3/3 because you can't really block, the damage goes there anyway. Then it becomes a 3/7, and then the next time it becomes like a 1/8 or something. And this is already problematic as not to be a card. So in the constructed format, this would to be much, much better statted or differently statted.
Even for limited, as a 2-color rare, this currently doesn't strike me as something that is super powerful at rare.
It's a bit problematic how to make it work.
Because if you actually increase the stats, then it becomes very, very powerful against decks without First Strike and without flying and without burn spells. So yeah, it's a weird balance there.
What do you do to make it better?
I think my initial instinct to improve on this card is just get rid of the final clause and kind of just play it as an interesting take on a creature. Like, this is not supposed to be the big blocker. Like, we already have enough interesting stuff on the card without the absorbing of damage that you take. So just balance the stats around a bit. I don't know how I would... I don't have an initial suggestion for this. And just keep it as an interesting take on a creature that permanently takes damage but then has armor. Because that's already a quite engaging concept, a very interesting one at that. So,
Jonathan Root has a card for us that is Mimic Ooze. 2 black creature ooze 3/3. Discard a creature card. If a creature card with flying was discarded this way, Mimic Ooze gains flying at the end of turn. The same is true for first strike, double strike, death touch, have haste, hexproof, indestructible, lifelink, reach, trample, and vigilance.
So for me, this is a 5 or a 6, I think. Somewhere between there. How about you?
I don't see an issue that much. I put it at 8.
All right. I feel like right now it's a bit underpowered because I have to invest a lot of resources into a single creature that in the end is a 4-mana 3/3 flyer if I discard a card with flying. So let's assume best case I discard like Atraxa, it becomes 3/3 double strike. Atraxa does, I'm sure there's a creature with like double strike, lifelink, whatever. I discard that. So I invest 2 cards into this for this to become a 3/3 double strike lifelinker until end of turn. Which, I don't know, feels a bit weak. And even if I build around it, then it just dies to lightning bolts and I kind of invested all my stuff. So I feel like the balance is off, but the idea itself of like it gobbling up the keywords of the things you feed it, very cool, just like very low powered at the moment, I feel like. Also in limited, for example, you don't have all these keywords. Like, it doesn't become more powerful in limited, whereas in constructed you can actually build your deck around it.
I think making it better is difficult because discarding a creature card for free is already a nice theme. Like you're already getting something you could pair it with a reanimator deck or with something that from your graveyard, and the stuff you want to reanimate naturally has a lot of the abilities. I mean, if you look at Atraxa, it's quite nice to have like Atraxa do something, stabilize, get the lifelink and stuff before you get her back. So my question would then be, if you want to make that card more exciting, which step would you go?
I have an exciting step. It might be too much.
Yeah, I'm not.
You already know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know what
just make it permanent.
Yeah.
It gets the ability forever.
Make it once each turn, but also add stats.
So you can only activate this ability once each turn?
Yes. And then we could say also as a sorcery, because getting indestructible in response is kind of annoying. So you do it once each turn as a sorcery, and then you can discard an Atraxa and bam, hit for 10.
All right, there you have it. That's our suggestions for fixing the card. You can obviously let us know what you think of these suggestions below, because we're also just making these up in our heads. So our next card comes from Simon Teasdale, and he submitted Cross the Threshold. It's a blue common for 1 mana, and it's a sorcery that has, if you have fewer than 7 cards in your graveyard, mill cards equal to the difference, and then investigate.
I'm thinking about how much to add for the idea, because that's gonna be the number. Let's give it a 3.
I went with 4.
Okay. I have issues.
I know you do, Toffel, but what about the card?
Oh, wow. Okay, let me picture this, right? I start off with my island. I cast this. I have 7 cards in my graveyard and a clue.
And you have 6 cards in hand.
And 6 cards in hand. No, 5 cards in hand, yes. That is broken. And to no belief broken that, let's assume my next play is somehow Island Treasure Cruise, right? Pretty good trade-off, like if you go through that sequencing. And there are obviously many more really strong interactions. You have a graveyard full of dredge cards in older formats.
I mean, let's put it this way. Tome Scour, which is 1 mana mill 5, is currently being played in Modern Dredge.
I would actually say, if you remove the investigate thing, the card would still be way too good.
I mean, yes, because you just use the upside. Like, you don't. It's just a dead card after some turns.
Right.
Which also is one of the other feel bats I have about the card, because yes, you get to investigate, which was clearly added as a thing where, oh, if it's not useful anymore, then you can still crack the clue. But still, I don't want a useless card that only investigates in my hand later on. Then maybe just give it cycling instead, because then either you get the powerful payoff or you get to cycle it away in the late game. Cycling feels like the better keyword to put on the card then.
I do really enjoy the pun of the name, like cross the threshold, and it gives you threshold.
Yeah,
you know? I've noticed that.
We do appreciate your jokes in the cards.
Yeah, even if some people don't really pay attention about the name and just plus over it because it's not worth anything.
Nobody would ever do that, Toffel.
Referenced in the name. Yeah, so next card. George I.B. Halbert brings Essence Thief, 1 white black 1/1 creature spirit. With menace and X, remove up to X counters from target permanent. For each counter removed this way, Essence Thief gets a +1/+1 counter.
So for me, this is a 9, I think. Seems like a very well thought out card to me. So a 3-mana creature, it's not super expensive that you can never cast it or anything, but at the same time it's not like a Hex Parasite where it only costs 1 mana. So it is an investment, but then you only get a 1/1 menace creature out of it, so it is a significant investment. But then the ability is actually very, very powerful, where removing X counters for X mana against Planeswalkers is crazy. With something like Dark Depths can get out of control very quickly. With enemy +1/+1 counters, stuff like that. So I feel like in the end, it is a big investment, and that can still be interacted with because it's a small creature when it starts out. But then the payoff is actually quite powerful when it works. How about you, Toffel? What did you give it?
I had it at a 5. I think it's just way too weak by that point in time, because you play it from 3, and then on 4 you have on 3 you have a 1/1 that doesn't do anything. You cannot activate it. I mean, besides you can actually literally activate it infinite times, which is kind of weird. But
yeah, some of those issues, like maybe it should only be activatable once per turn, so you have to spend the maximum amount of mana instead of doing one, something like that. Yeah.
No, I think X can't be 0 just is enough. It's also not worth a point. Like it's just But I was wondering, it's like, why don't you make like a 2-mana 1/1? Because removing counters does not come up that often, and I think the most time where it comes up is your opponent can't play their Planeswalkers anymore if it doesn't kill it. But then again, a lot of the Planeswalkers, when you play them, can already get rid of this. Like, it's a 1/1, so it's really hard to keep it on the board, so you have to kind of hold it after they play the Planeswalker, but then you have to also add the additional mana. And even if you eat a Planeswalker, let's say it had 2 loyalty, and it's a 3/3 now, it gets bolded, it gets removed, so I feel the input is not worth the output.
All right, maybe.
But I like all of the implications that are there, right? You're really putting a threat onto the board when it stakes that your opponent has to deal with if they have a lot of counters. And I think as a general standard level, power level card, if you make it a bit faster, a bit stronger, it's quite appealing.
Noah Game Master has submitted To Those Who Wait, which is a 3-mana blue-white instant, which gains 3 life and draws a card, then puts itself 3rd from the top of your library, and it says if you've cast another To Those Who Wait this game, you draw an additional card.
I love it.
Same. It's so cool.
I love it to the point that I really would like to give it a 10, but I have one specific issue which makes it unplayable. Like, not unplayable, but unprintable, basically.
Okay, interesting. I have 2 gripes with it, so I gave it an 8.
So let me picture you this scenario. You're playing a nice game of Magic, right? Your opponent is like playing a blue-white control deck, and you're like in the midst of the game, and you stabilized on whatever. It's like at the end of your turn, your opponent casts To Those Who Wait, and draws 2 cards.
1 card.
No. I mean, they already cast it. Like, we went to the part where this already happened. So, but you draw 2, and then you put it on the library, and then once you have gone through like drawing 2 more cards, you get this back. Fuel your same engine, and that is not doable. Like you cannot. Your opponent, I mean, besides being very, very raging, miserable.
As soon as you have 3, you can just cast them infinitely.
Yes.
So every mana you have turns into a 1/3 of a card, or no, 2/3 of a card, and 1 life.
Yes. So it's kind of Not doable. It's too oppressive in a standard environment when you pair it with a lot of good removal spells, and I mean you don't even need card draw spells because that's your card draw spell that also gains.
All right, so Toffel, what
Yes.
if the first time it puts itself back, and then the second time it actually maybe gets exiled, maybe it gets put into the graveyard, something like that?
Yeah, maybe you just exile it.
So maybe you just do that afterwards. The other issue I have with this, so this introduces a cool mechanic into Magic the Gathering, which is have you done this once in a game thing? I feel like this reminds me very strongly of the Pokemon trading card game, where you have certain attacks or abilities that you can do one-off in a game. And this is kind of like that, right? For every game, you would probably have a marker that says, I have cast this already, or I haven't, because you have to keep track somehow. Otherwise, games will blur in your head. You and your opponent might not agree on if you've cast it. So that's a cool thing that can be part of a game of Magic the Gathering. It's very easy to mark. But I feel like marking it for my uncommon kind of card draw thing, that's not the payoff I'm looking for.
No.
The payoff I'm looking for is Approach of the Second Sun. Have I cast this before? I win the game.
Then it doesn't even matter if you didn't cast it before, it's just over.
Yeah. So that's the kind of thing where I feel like, yes, I am invested in this. I put the marker down. I will keep track of this. But why do I keep track for the card draw? It is such a cool card. Like, I agree with you. It is so cool, and I love it. I also love the idea of introducing another one of these cards that keeps track of something. But in general, I feel like this card would play awesome. Like, the first time, all right, I only get to draw one card, but all the other times I get to draw two, gain life.
It does, like, I wonder, it does feels a little bit like a role-playing game where you make your cards better because you played them, right?
Like a deck builder.
Yeah, exactly. So,
yeah.
I mean, now you get to your hands, like, you don't get 3 life, you gain 0 life, and then for each time you played it, you get 1 more life.
Yes.
And then you always draw 1 card. Like, you have many knobs to fulfill there.
It feels like, but yes, actually, if you turn the dial way up on the customization, then it's something I can get invested into building again, because I'm not building my boring card draw spell up one point. I'm building an entire cool new card where it gains me more life or something like that.
I feel like if you use this mechanic, it needs to be the center of your deck and
Or
exciting.
maybe even your set.
Yeah. Like it needs to be the reason the card is there, and not I get more cards because I played it again. All right.
But in general, very cool idea in my opinion. You convinced both Toffel and me, and we both find the card awesome, but also think it can't be printed. So our final card for today was submitted by Sunday Kessig, who submits a short and simple design, Mind Kindler. 2 and a red, so 3 mana in total, for a Goblin Shaman, a 1/3 that says, at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player draws 2 cards, and players have a maximum hand size of 3.
I don't see any issue. I would print it right away. For me, it's a 10.
Wow, a 10. I was thinking about 7.
I honestly don't see why this shouldn't be printed. It
Like,
has a very strong ability that if it stays there, warps the game, which is kind of cool. You can build a deck around to make this your favorite. Obviously, you're playing red, so you have a lot of cheap spells. Your maximum hand size doesn't bother you that much when you have your cheap stuff. Your opponent, it's high payoff, but also high risk. I mean, your opponent will draw 2 additional cards before getting rid of it. So the only argument would be it's maybe too weak. Like,
yeah, that was actually my main gripe with it. I feel like it might be too weak.
yeah, I can see that. When you play your 3 mana card and your opponent just removes it, maybe you put it like on the player's end step to draw the 2 cards.
So you actually get the payoff?
So you get the payoff. You also have to discard if you're over 3.
Yeah.
So that would be very bad. But then your opponent couldn't sorcery remove it because then they don't get to draw the 2 cards for free.
Okay, that I think that might be an improvement. But I agree with you that the idea feels very red. Like, of course, it's this exciting creature. It's a huge risk because your opponent most likely has the choice of when to remove it, so they can kind of control the game that way. But then also it has this huge payoff where you force your opponent to play your own game. Your hand size is reduced to 3, so you better flood the board or deal bolts or something like that.
You could also give it flash. I don't see why it couldn't have flash. Then you're benefiting from drawing your 2 cards first, but also you're having to discard first. But at least if this is your last card, you get to draw 2.
I feel like for power level, that might be the correct move, but for just I play the crazy stuff and I'm the red deck forcing you to play my game. I feel like Flash isn't on theme there necessarily.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think both of us agree that this is a very cool design and could just be printed in a similar fashion. So that's it for custom cards today. That does not mean that that's it for custom cards forever, because we do regularly put out these kind of community posts where you can submit your own decks or your own cards, and we take a look at them, we rate them, we play them, stuff like that. If you have specific wishes as which of these you would like to see more often, your decks, your cards, I don't know, tournament deck lists, tournament reports, please let us know in the comments below as to what kind of content you want to see, because this informs us. This helps us build the channel in the direction that is most popular with you.
Obviously, if you want to see those posts, you have to be subscribed to the channel. So guess what you have to do? What they have to do?
Scroll down there, click the subscribe button, and then while you're at it, also thumbs up the video. You know, it's so easy to do.
Yeah, in that sense, thanks for watching.
We'll see you next time. That's all of the beer.